Hi everyone, this is Igor from vinousreverie, the shop for the adventurous wine drinker. And welcome to the show, everything you ever wanted to know about wine but were afraid to ask. Today it's episode 3. We'll call it The Myth of Total Wine. Alright, so I'm going to have special guest, my co-host Kevin Wing, join me right now. Hey Kevin, how are you?
Um, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, suddenly when I got connected,
Yeah.
sound of your voice, let me turn my volume up.
Sure. Let me know.
Okay.
I can hear you fine.
Okay. Yeah, in fact, I think I need to turn the volume up on my phone. You know, in addition to what you just said, the myth of total wine, yeah, another just general way of describing what we're going to talk about
Yeah.
is frankly, all the silly ways that the industry, tries to get you to buy wine.
Yeah.
And, there's many different sides to wine. On one hand, I think it's the world's most interesting consumer product because every bottle of wine is different. Every vintage is different. There's just this huge variety of native grape varietals that you can explore and have fun with. It's like if somebody likes to hike. I mean, do you want to go hike on the same trail every time? No, one weekend you may want to go here, another weekend you may want to go there. And that's what wine allows you to do. And as somebody who selects every wine at each producer in Europe, I'm looking for, authenticity. I'm looking for expressiveness, in each wine. On the other hand, there's a business side to all this too.
Hey,
You
Kevin,
know,
for a second. To what you were talking about. So you have your own company, Wust Imports, and you import wines from Europe, and you sell them to wine shops and restaurants in the United States. So right here we have Valpanera, which is the one of the producers that you carry. And on the bottom, let me just where my finger is, so you guys can see. It says Wust Wine Imports. So it says who the importer of this wine is, which is you. So I just wanted to showcase because this is what you do, and we'll talk a little bit later about imports. So
yeah, and that's required information
yeah,
on every back label of an imported wine. Yeah, I mean the labeling is regulated by a U.S. government authority called the TTB, the Tobacco and Tax Bureau, and for each one of my wines, I have to submit copies of the labels to the TTB,
yeah,
and they have to review all the information, including the one that says don't operate machinery after you've been drinking a little bit, and
yeah.
the
About
but
the pregnancy too, right? If you're pregnant, you shouldn't be drinking wine. Yeah,
yes. Yeah, I mean, there's this big warning. That's on domestic wines as well. But, why we, initially are, going to make some comments about Total Wine, is as an importer and distributor, I need to try to find, what I consider suitable and appropriate places to carry my wines. And my preference is to focus on, independent wine shops such as yourselves,
yeah.
because I really think that you do the best job of helping your customers find wines that are right for them, instead of just these huge walls of wine where you're like, well, where do I even start? But I went into the Total Wine import section, and a little bit more about me. I source wines from 6 different countries, 40 different wine regions, and, I have spent extensive amounts of time in every wine region in Europe, whether I actually source wine from that region or not.
Yeah.
And, I have visited, the prominent producers in almost every one of these regions. And so I'm walking through the import section of Total Wine, and, I see a particular producer, but a different cuvee or bottling than I know that is his standard bottling. And so then, knowing that the importer information is on the back of the bottle,
Yeah.
I turn it around and I see Sorrenti Imports, Stamford, Connecticut. I'm like, huh, that's weird because their importer is North Bone Wines, you know. So then I see another one that it's like, huh, you know, that's not a cuvee that I recognize from, you know, that they bottle, you know, in, you know, at their property in Italy. I turn the bottle around, Sorrenti Imports, Stamford, Connecticut, you know, and like, huh, that's not their standard importer. You know, I mean, there's, you know, there's standard importers, you know, Sienna Imports, you know, and
Kevin, a lot of these wineries that you're talking about, they go with one importer. So this wine that I show you, Valpanera, they go with Wus Wines. They're not going to go with any other importer, at least like not on the West Coast. So this is officially, it will only go through you. So once you see Sorrenti Imports, it's a red flag to you.
yeah. And so, you know, and it goes further than that, that here's a wine that's suddenly in the market, not through the producer's normal importer. But I also focus only on wineries with estate grown fruit.
Yes.
And I have a silly saying that I import wine, not products.
Yes.
You know, you know, if you only use your own estate grown fruit, you have a better understanding of what to do with that fruit each year, because the fruit changes every year.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, every growing season is different. And, you know, you are going to produce, in my opinion, better wines. And that's why, you know, I will only purchase wines from estate grown fruit. But here's the thing. I start looking at all these bottles that have Sorrenti Imports on the back. And, you know, when I did this one day in Total Wine, they're like 60% of the imported wines that I turned the bottles around had Sorrenti Imports on, you know, on the back.
Yeah.
But they were from producers that, for their normal, what are called cuvées, you know, they're, you know, the typical bottlings that they do every year, they only use their own estate grown fruit. And, you know, they don't have more fruit. You know, they can't suddenly just expand their vineyards overnight.
Yeah.
You know, to suddenly have a lot more grapes. And so, you know, I don't know, you know, the actual reality of what is going on, but I would guess that Total Wine has approached a lot of these, you know, so-called prestigious producers in Europe and basically asked, can we rent your name? You know, and put it on a bottle. And I guess since everybody likes to make more money rather than less money, the answer is, okay, yeah, you can do that. But, you know, given that these are producers that normally only bottle wines through their own estate grown fruit, it's like, where'd they get the grapes, you know, to do this? You know, and who even made the wine? Yeah. I mean, that's another thing, because aside from the fact that a lot of these, you know, prestigious producers are only using estate grown fruit for their normal bottlings that are then imported by the importer that they've worked with for years, you know, who's supposed to have an exclusive. So, you know, it's none of my business how that's working, you know, for them. But a lot of these wineries are actually fairly small. So it's like, you know, where is even the facility that's being used to then create these special, like, you know, bottlings for Total Wine? I don't know. You know, and that gets into another way that I see a lot of these wines described. You know, you see this like shelf talker, you know, with like exclamation points on it. Winery Direct. Huh? Yep. Winery Direct? Well, I mean, I would guess it's not even estate grown fruit. So it's like, what does Winery Direct mean? You know, and I think they're trying to suggest, oh, you know, we've just done such a great job going to Europe and finding these special deals for you. But frankly, you know, I'm bewildered as to their actual provenance, you know, where the grapes came from, you know, who even made the wine. You know, I mean, the wine business, you know, is, you know, can be a difficult business. So if somebody in Europe, you know, is trying to add to their revenue streams by essentially renting their name to Total Wine to come up with bottlings, you know, I don't want to begrudge them too much, because frankly, you know, everybody has to make a living. I mean, there's a funny old joke, you know, about people in the agriculture sector, which is, you know, why do they call farming farming? And the punchline is, well, gambling was already taken.
Yeah.
Because there's some awful weather events that can happen every year. In 2016, Chablis production was down 80%.
Yeah.
Because first you had frost in the spring, and then when the vines recovered from that, you had this huge hailstorm that that hit Chablis in May. And in fact, one of my producer in Cahors, a Malbec producer in Southwest France, he had no wine in 2017. There was this huge hailstorm that hit his vineyards, in June that year, and he had no wine. And so, if somebody is trying to, sort of offset the risks of their business by renting their name to somebody to bottle wines under their name, I don't want to begrudge them too much. But from the consumer perspective on this, where if you really want to know what you're getting, I think the actual reality of where these wines come from is important.
And Kevin, let me jump in, and I'll give my thoughts on that. So on all the stuff you just mentioned. So I think the concept of Total Wine is that they provide the best wines at the best pricing. So one of the things that you were mentioning is the other thing you didn't mention is that frequently a lot of the labels look different than the official label of the producer. So it looks similar, but not the exact same. So not only is the wine not coming from the estate fruit, the labels also look different. So what the thing is, and the direct import, what they're saying is that consumer, we're cutting out the middleman and passing the savings on to you. That's really what they're trying to say with that thing. That's how they try to show how great they are. But here's what they're doing. Let me kind of just simplify it. It's like when you go to Trader Joe or when you go to Kirkland. Trader Joe says, here's a Trader Joe wine. It comes from Napa Valley. It doesn't have a Napa Valley producer. It has Trader Joe's official label. It's a private label wine. When you go Kirkland, it's a private label wine. They're saying like, oh, this is a Kirkland from Chardonnay du Pape. It came from secondary fruit that some producer didn't want. He had extra fruit to give it to Costco, and they said like, yeah, you could bottle this secondary fruit under a second label, private label. So what you're saying is that Total Wine has all these wines that have Sorrenti imports on the back. They're basically private label wines. The only difference is Total Wine, if they put Total Wine on it, nobody would buy those wines because everybody thinks the private label wines are not that good. So what Total Wine is doing is they're fooling the consumer. Unlike Trader Joe and Costco, they're actually being dishonest. That's, I think, what the bottom line is. I think you were kind of explaining the long way about it, and I wanted to cut straight to the point.
Yeah.
If it's
go ahead.
too good to be true, it is too good to be true.
Yeah, and the confirmation, for me is I've visited a whole bunch of these high-end producers.
Yeah. And
I know that they only use estate-grown fruit. And as I said earlier, you can't just suddenly expand your vineyards overnight. And as you noted, the labels, they may have the producer's name on it, but they look a little bit different.
Yep.
Sorrenti
imports on the back. That's the red flag, the telltale sign. If you see that, it could be great wine, it could not be great, but it's a private label wine. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, in fact, it possibly, I don't want to cast aspersions, but I know enough about how all this stuff is regulated that, frankly, they could be shipping wine in bulk to Fred Franzia's operation, Bronco Wine in the Central Valley, and bottling it. Yeah. You just have no idea where the grapes came from. And on that subject, too, that part of it's actually kind of funny. Because if these were really good grapes, somebody would bottle it under their own name and under their own cuvee. And so who knows where the grapes came from?
Yeah, and the illusion is Total Wine saying like, no, they bottled this great estate fruit just for us, and we can cut it out the middleman and passing the savings to you. That's what they're trying to say, which is completely not true. And the other thing, what Total Wine's model is that they say like, hey, look at all these name brands, and there's plenty of Napa, like famous Napa Valley wines, and they're saying like, hey, if you come to us, you get the best pricing on them, no doubt about it. So what the consumer is thinking, they either have the volume, the power to get much better pricing, pennies on the dollar, or they're cutting up the margins. But what's really happening, and a lot of people like importers, distributors, they told me the same thing. They don't have any more buying power than I do. I get the same pricing that Total Wine does. So what they do is they put thin margins, and they buy tiny volume. So they advertise that. So when you come in and they're out of stock, they're like, oh, we're out of stock. But hey, we got all these other wines never heard of, but they're such great deals. And if you come in, they frequently have like, oh, wine of the week. This is our buyer recommends it. And you're like, well, I don't know what this is. So if you're a casual consumer, you're like, I don't know what this is, but it's probably good. They recommend it. But somebody like me who knows a lot about wine, if I don't know who that is, that's a red flag, because I know a whole lot of wines. And guess what? Whoever that is, there's Sorrenti imports on the back of that label. And what that means is they have huge margins on those wines. So they get you in on the facade that you have small margins on the labels that you trust. And then they go with the private labels where they have huge margins. And if they have huge margins, it's a cheaply made wine. And most likely, it's not going to be that good. So like I said, if it's too good to be true, it is too good to be true. It's not that good. So,
yeah, another comical way of marketing wines, in my opinion, is the retail prices for wines are all over the map. And you can use your browser to like put in the price of a wine, and whether you're using an industry standard search engine like Wine Searcher or you're not. I mean, you can see all these results that come up with, there'll be like a 40% difference between somebody's low price and somebody's high price. And, just to keep track of what's going on in the distribution channel, I have, subscribed to like all these email lists for all these wine retailers. And there's this one in particular, and, I kind of prefer not even to name names, but there's this one where every day there's emails being sent out, 40% off regular price, screaming deal. And so, I know a lot of these wines. And I'm like, God, how can they offer that at 40% off? So then I look at the actual price, that they're charging for it. I'm like, that's like the regular retail price for it. It's not 40% off. So then I'll go on to Wine Searcher, and you can see the prices that everybody has on the internet. And let's say for a wine that, somebody typically sells for $30, there will always be somebody out on the internet trying to sell it for $50. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's how all these people that use like 40% off offers justify what they're doing, because there's somebody out there in the world somewhere trying to sell that wine for $50. I mean, a really highly respected wine by a lot of people is the Caymus Special Selection. Yeah. And so from this particular retailer, whose name I won't mention, about 3 months ago, I saw this deal, Caymus Special Selection, 40% off. Well, at the winery, it's typically $175. And at retail, it's like $165 to $170. So I pop open the email, and it's $169.99. Oh, 40% off? How can that be? So I go on to Wine Searcher, and I see somebody retailing it for $255. Yeah. So I mean, that's another misleading way that people try to, make you think that you're getting some really super deal.
Well, but I'll jump in on that. I'll actually give you a better example. That's the model that Safeway uses. So if you ever go to Safeway, they have like, 30% off, and they have the listed price, but that's not a real listed price. Nobody sells it at that listed price. So the quote unquote 30% off you get from Safeway, that's actually the regular price that every other retailer charges for that wine. So it's a facade they try to use because they're basically thinking the consumer is not going to be doing deep research, and the consumer is probably not going to be doing deep research. You know, if you're in Safeway shopping, you're not going to be looking up online and price, you know, shopping for 5-cent difference or anything like that. But so they know that. So that's just the facade of you getting a deal. It's a facade. There's nothing else to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, something that is comical that I do see out at various clients is there's, you know, a customer like looking at the wines on the shelf and they have their phone with them. Yeah. And frankly, you know, I choose who I do business with, you know, and if somebody has business practices that I don't agree with, I do not do business with them. Yeah. And so the customers that I have, you know, have straightforward business practices where they're, you know, where they're not trying to mislead people, you know, but, you know, occasionally, you know, I'll go into other places that are doing what you're describing, and there'll be somebody with this puzzled look on their face and with their phone in their hand, and they see this, like, you know, promotional sign, 30% off, and they're looking at their phone. You can see this kind of weird look on their face, like, oh, what? Yeah. I mean, no, it's not 30% off. I mean, so if you have your phone with you, probably check, you know, whether what somebody's trying to market to you is actually real. And but you know, another comical thing I see is, you know, everybody wants a bargain, you know, but again, not to mention a specific retailer by name, but, you know, there's, you know, various places that have, like, you know, buy one, get the next one for 5 cents or something. Yeah. It's like, huh, how do you do that? You know, is this actually a charity? Yeah. You know, they're just, you know, empowered to give away free wine or something. Yes. But, you know, everything has an economic basis in fact. And I mean, there is one unfortunate reality to the wine world. On one hand, there's really good wines made, you know, from people that are very dedicated and committed. But worldwide, there is a glut of vineyards. Yes. I mean, too many wine grapes are frankly produced every year. And, you know, to go beyond that, the better producers, they only bottle maybe 40% of what they produce. Yeah. Yeah. And they sell off the rest in bulk, you know, and, you know, nobody even knows where it, you know, originally came from. It may still be okay wines, but frankly, there's all this wine floating around, you know, and you know, there's a website, winebusiness.com. You know, you can go on that. You just see continual offers for bulk wine, you know, and so you see these, you know, offers at retail. It's like, buy the second bottle for 5 cents. Well, you know, how do you do that? You know, it's like, you know, you're getting deeply I mean, that retailer is buying very, very deeply discounted wines. And, yeah, hey, go ahead.
Let me actually ask you a question, something that you talked to me in the past. You said when you go tasting wines, let's use France, for example. Out of how many wines that you have to taste are good? Out of, you know, how many wines that you taste? You know, what's the ratio?
Yeah. Now this is kind of interesting. You know, I don't want to trash France, and you know, I have, you know, wines from 12 regions in France, and to me they're good wines. But you know, France is looked at as, oh, it's the most prestigious wine producing country on earth. And I have to taste like 20 wines in France for every one wine I select. And, you know, there's a reality to that, which are there's these huge French supermarket chains, and they know that they can basically sell anything they put on the shelf, regardless of the quality. And the French winemakers, you know, kind of like shrug their shoulders and like, whatever, you know, whatever I bottle, you know, I can sell it to Carrefour.
Well, and the reason I pointed out, it jumped out to me, that ratio 1 to 20, is that the one producer is not going to be giving deep discounts on the wines. So what Total Wine is getting is that 19 out of the other 20. That's what they're getting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, this has been interesting to me. The ratio, Germany, whose wines, frankly, are not very popular on the West Coast.
But
Um,
spectacular.
yeah, I'm sorry, what?
But they're spectacular.
Yeah, oh yeah. Germany, I only have to taste 6 wines for every one I select. Italy is interesting. Italy can be kind of mixed. But on average, I have to taste like 8 to 10 wines for every one I select.
Yeah.
Spain, I have to taste about 8 wines for every one I select.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just amazed by the places I've tasted in France, where the stuff was just awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in places where like some wine spectator article had been written about the place, and I'm like, God, I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, they just, the wines just don't taste good.
Well, and I think if we kind of go circle back to Total Wine, one of the reasons I brought it up, to me, I think like the myth of Total Wine, it was, it's been haunting the wine merchants since the dawn of man. How like great they are. I'll put that in sarcastic quotes. Yeah. And because frequently I get questions like, well, how are you going to compete with Total Wine? That's a question I get like all the time. And the implication behind that question is, well, you have 400 selections. They have 8,000, so they must have everything that you have, only cheaper. That's kind of the implication of the question. And to give like an anecdote about it, somebody came in, they were looking for Chacolí, which is like a little nice wine from the Basque Country in northeast Spain. And I asked, well, how did you come here? And they're like, oh, somebody from Total Wine sent me your way. I was like, oh, well, that's great. I'm glad they sent you my way. So you're telling me that Total Wine has 8,000 wines, that they have a Chacolí, and I have it? Is that kind of what you're telling me? Because that's what she was telling me. Do you know what I mean, Kevin? So, and then like the other thing is that many distributors say there's wines that don't go to Total Wine, Bevmore, Safeway. They don't go there. They go to small shops and prestigious restaurants, shops like me. So frequently, if you look at I'll give you an example. Let's say some kind of a barometer. I don't know. I have maybe 70-80% of the store is 90 point or above rated wines. If you don't count Justice Robinson, who scores her wines on a scale from 17 to 20, which is another like a 90-point wine, it's probably over 80%. So Total Wine doesn't have that. None of those Sorrenti imports have any points on them. Just to use that as some kind of a barometer. How come none of those wines are rated? So to me, the question I would like to always ask is, instead of people asking me, hey, how would you compete with Total Wine? The question I want to ask is, how would Total Wine compete with me? I have great wines. They have crap. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, I think that's a valid point. You hear, oh, they've got such a great selection, 8,000 SKUs.
Yeah.
Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to over time buy each one of them?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the point of having 8,000 SKUs? I mean, I just don't get it. Yeah. I mean, frankly,
there's not 8,000 wines that get 90 points. Not even close. Just to give you a perspective, if you use like a 90-point scale as a quality measurements, not even close.
Yeah, I mean the few times that I've been in, stores like that, I mean the consumers frankly just look completely baffled. Yeah, I mean it's like if there's something you like from a store like that, and you enjoy the wine, the price is good for you, please go buy it. We're not, I'm not trying to, trash, your consumer choice to go, to like a big box retailer, to buy your wine. But, the issue to me is the integrity of how these wines are marketed. And I mean, it's like, to begin with, 8,000 SKUs. How do you even market 8,000 SKUs? I mean, you frankly have to use deception. You know, I mean, you know, to try to induce people to buy all this stuff. You know, I mean, most consumers probably only need, you know, 6 to 8 wines, that are going to be perfect for all their drinking needs.
Yeah.
You know, so what's the point of going to some place that has 8,000 wines? I just don't understand it. You know, I have a really funny experience with one of my clients. You know, it's what I would generically call a neighborhood wine shop, in the Bay Area. I'm not going to even tell you what city. But, you know, this shop only has about 120 SKUs in it. You know, it's had a pretty local or loyal local following for a long time. And then COVID hits a year ago. And the guy is like, how do I even run my shop? And with 120 SKUs, well, I mean, you know every one of your wines as well. Yeah, but with 120 SKUs, this guy definitely knows every one of his wines. So the way he decided to run his shop, I'm only going to let one person in at a time. You know, instead of having, a bunch of people in there browsing. And the guy's sales, I mean, people have been consuming a lot more wine in the last year, but the guy's sales are up 50% year over year, allowing only one person in the shop at a time. And it's because he knows all of his customers, and it's like he can focus on, hey, what would be good for you tonight? Versus 8,000 SKUs. Who's going to help you there?
Well, who's going to help you is one question, and the second question: what are they going to help you with? The bulk wine that they sell. That's the kick, to the whole thing. So, that's what we're talking about. I think, Kevin, like you said, if you want to shop at those stores, you can shop at the stores, but those stores, they create a narrative, and the narrative is like, hey, we're better than somebody else. And we're telling you, like, no, here's the actual narrative. You can still shop with them, absolutely not. But we have to counter that false narrative that they're trying to, myth. That's what we're talking about. They're creating a myth. And we just debunk it.
Yeah, and I feel strongly that they actually hurt the wine business. Because, somebody might think, oh, I've heard about Barolos. I'd like to try some Barolos.
Yeah.
And then they pick one off the shelf at a place like that. It's imported by Serenity Imports. As I've already described, who knows where it came from, really, other than they're renting somebody's name to put on the label. Then they try it, and it's like, I don't really like this. And then they're like, oh, Barolos, they're overrated.
Yeah.
I'm never going to try another Barolo again.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, they really do a disservice, to, the authenticity and the enjoyment of wine. Yeah, you can go in there and fill up your shopping cart. In fact, one of the I have a funny sort of comparison. As I described earlier, I select, every wine at each producer.
Yeah.
And I already described that most serious producers are only bottling about 40% of what they produce. But these are all small local wineries, and the ones that the villagers go to every day to buy their wines. But in most of them, there's this big tank out in the main room.
Yeah.
And this this is the stuff that they chose not to bottle.
Yeah.
And you continually see the stream of pensioners shuffling in with the European equivalent of 1 gallon jugs in each hand and going over to the tank, and putting the hose into their bottle and turning on the spigot, and frankly, I mean, who would know if that's the stuff that Total Wine's buying? I don't know.
Well, and what you're saying is true. I mean, at the end, they're trying to fool the consumer into their own financial gain. And so, okay, financial gain, that's fine. All of us want to have financial gain, but fooling the consumer is fooling the consumer. That's what they're doing. There's no ifs or buts about it. They're fooling the consumer. So, like I said, Trader Joe and Kirkland brand, they're not fooling the consumer. They're saying, hey, this is our private label. Total Wine is fooling the consumer. And, you know, Bevmo has the same private label. All of them have private labels. That's where they have the margins. That's, you know, the mediocre stuff. It's really what gets them all the stuff. It's not the branded, you know, trusted products.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wish there was, you know, more uniform integrity in how wines are marketed, because, you know, it's a beautiful product.
Yeah.
You know, every bottle's different. You know, every vintage is different. There's a tremendous variety of grape varietals that you can explore. You know, and you know, there should be integrity and authenticity in how all that is marketed, instead of, you know, just trying to somehow induce you into buying, you know, as much stuff as possible.
And the funny thing about it, Kevin, you know, it's funny that you use Barolo example, because I was just recently, you know, I like to keep up. I like to read a lot of, you know, wine, you know, what's going on in the wine world, whatever it's domestically, you know, like magazines like Wine Enthusiast, Wine Spectator, or internationally like Decanter or Jensen's Robinson, which I, you know, really trust that publication. And what I'm noticing is that Barolas are getting the highest grades consistently from everybody, higher than the Burgundies, higher than the Bordeaux's. So you're right. When somebody gets a bad example of the wine that's considered by many people to be the best in the world, it's a shame that they kind of discredit such a beautiful wine. And you know, that's all the discredit is going into their favor somehow. You know, hey, this is going into where we have all our margins. That's simply the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just amazed, you know, the one time that I did go into a Total Wine and I start turning around bottles, and 60%. I mean, you know, I mean, this was like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, or I don't know. No, about like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
So maybe it's changed. I don't know. You know, but 6 out of 10 bottles that I turned around and looked at the label were Sarandi imports.
Yeah.
You know, so as you described it, you know, directly, these are essentially private label bottlings. You don't really know where the grapes came from. You don't really know who the winemaker was. You know, I'm just going to roll my eyes at the fact that, you know, somebody with a fairly good reputation in Europe was willing to rent their name.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah, I mean, to allow them to do that. But I mean, that's, you know, that's what you're getting. You know, it's like, you know, it does not say Total Wine Barolo on it. You know?
And it
yeah.
should.
Yeah. Yeah, it should.
Yes, they would be honest about it. Well, Kim, what non-total wines are you enjoying lately?
I mean, what's fun to me, and this is not a marketing pitch, but what's fun to me about my portfolio is my focus on native varietals. And you know, lately the Refosco is always fun. It's sort of like Cab Franc, but you know, but with a little bit more spiciness and a little bit more deeper, richer flavors than Cab Franc. But you know, lately you know, I've been tasting from Abruzzo a Pecorino Malvasia blend that just tastes big.
Two white wines. So Pecorino's a white Malvasia, yeah.
Yes, and then got this very, very minerally, you know, Puy Fume from the Loire. In fact, this is kind of funny too. You know, who even knows what Puy Fume is? Well, it's you know, it's 5 miles from Sancerre. Of course, a lot of people think Sancerre is actually a grape. You know, not a place.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, but you know, this part of the Loire, it's all Sauvignon Blanc. You know, and you know, but if it's on the west side of the river, it's Sancerre, and if it's on the east side of the river, you know, it's Puy Fume. But that's just been tasting great lately. And then from Montsant in northeastern Spain, yeah, I have a Reserva that is just spectacular. I've tasted that with some clients in the last you know, week or so, and everybody bought it.
Is that Grenache-based wine?
You know, that one is 60% or 50% Grenache, 30% Carignan, and 20% Cabernet Sauvignon.
And Carignan, that's Carignan.
Yeah. Yes.
Same grape as one of the Rhone varietals.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I think you made the point in the last session I mean, Carignana is actually a native Spanish grape, but you know, given the location of where Spain is in the Mediterranean, a lot of Spanish grapes migrated up into France. I mean, that's the same thing with Monastrell. I mean, who knows what Monastrell is? A lot of people know what Mourvedre is,
Yes.
but you know, Mourvedre is Monastrell. It was a native Spanish grape discovered, you know, southwest of Valencia 600 years ago
Yes.
on the estate of someone with the last name of Mourvedre.
Yes.
And that's how it became known as Mourvedre. People, you know, when it got to France, people say, well, where's that from? Well, that's from Mourvedre. You know, so that's why people started calling it Mourvedre in France.
Oh, that's
and
factoid, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, in Spain, it's always been called Monastrell. And here's why. There were some thirsty monks that thought it made really good monastery wine. It was the star of the monastery, Monastrell, because Estrella is star in Española.
Well, there you go, man. That's such fun information, man. I geek out things like that.
Yeah. In fact, the names of the varietals often have very prosaic meanings. You know, in Italy, they all sound very romantic. Like, you know, there's a red in Campania, Peter Rosso. Yeah. Doesn't that sound romantic? And, you know, well, in Italiano, Pied is foot. Rosso, of course, is red. And this particular grape variety has a very strange growth habit where the roots of the vines do not go directly down into the earth at the base of the vine. They travel on top of the earth for like 6 to 8 inches, and the roots are red. So the Italians, you know, call this, you know, this particular varietal redfoot.
Well, you know, it's so funny, Kevin, you mentioned, I think that's like a whole show could be dedicated to a lot of the historical, I guess, aspects of a lot of these wines, because a lot of them have fun history, like you're describing. I mean, it's so funny. I don't know a lot of it, but I'm guessing, you know, because you travel through a lot of the Europe, you get learn that information through your travels.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a fun part of this. Yeah, so yeah, I really enjoy what I'm doing, aside from the alcohol part of it.
Good stuff. Get the 1 out of 20, right?
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't even believe it in France. I'm like, oh my God. You know, and they kind of just shrug their shoulders. The whole, you know, it's like, well, whatever. I can sell it to Carrefour if you don't like it.
Yeah. Big supermarket chain in France.
Yeah.
No, but it was fun. Hey, I think this was a fun discussion. Hopefully, we shed some light on, you know, the total wine myth. And thanks for all the information, Kevin. Again, you know, we'll pick another topic for next week. So thank you guys for joining us, and Kevin, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome, Igor. Good to see you again.
All right. Have a nice day. You too. Have a nice evening. Bye.
All right. Bye.